The drama begins with Omum, a girl who works as a restaurant reviewer. She writes reports about restaurants and has a deep love for food. Her dream is to become a screenwriter, but all her writings have failed and no one wants to buy them. She lost her mother when she was young, and later, during high school, she lost her father as well. However, he left her a large house where she now lives alone. The only person in her life is her cousin, An, whom she considers a sister. Since An has no family either, she lives in Omum's house. Although An is older than her, Omum sometimes takes care of her financially. On the other hand, many people want to buy Omum's house and try to convince An by offering her large commissions if she persuades Omum to sell it. However, she completely refuses because the house reminds her of all the moments she shared with her father. Next, we are introduced to Mike, a famous singer and dancer. However, the agency he works for takes advantage of his good looks and wants him to focus more on acting and advertisements rather than music, which he does not like because he is passionate about music. The agency also asks him to travel to Korea to be the face of a certain product. Meanwhile, Mike has deep feelings of love for his childhood friend, Min. Mike watches her from a distance, then calls her to invite her to dinner before he leaves, as he misses her. However, she coldly refuses and tells him that she will meet him after he returns from Korea because she is busy at the moment. Feeling sad, Mike leaves. A few days later, An discovers that she is pregnant. She calls her boyfriend, Bao, and asks to meet him to tell him the news. When they meet and she shares it with him, he confesses that he has lost his job and that they have many debts. While they are talking, An receives a call from one of the agents trying to buy the house, but she firmly refuses to sell it. After the call, Bao suggests that she try to convince Omum to sell the house so they can split the money and pay off their debts. However, she tells him that the house belongs only to Omum and that she has no right to it. The next day, Bao and An plan to trick Omum. They go to her and tell her that she has won a 5-day trip to Korea. An lies, saying that Bao won the trip in a work competition but cannot go because he is too busy, so he decided to give it to her instead. Omum feels happy, especially after they assure her that all travel and accommodation expenses will be completely free. Omum is surprised that the trip is scheduled for the next day, and to claim it, she is asked to sign some papers. An and Bao convinces her that these papers are just proof that she is receiving the ticket from Bao. Excited, she signs them without reading. However, in reality, these papers are an official authorization giving An the right to sell her house. An feels guilty for deceiving Omum in this way, but Bao tries to convince her that they had no other choice. He tells her that if they hadn't done this, they wouldn't have been able to pay off their debts. He also promises her that after settling all the debts, they will return the money to Omum's account. Meanwhile, Omum is busy packing her bags, feeling extremely happy, completely unaware of what has been planned against her. The next day, Omum goes to the airport, ready for her trip, while An and Bao drive her there. At the same time, Mike is also at the airport, heading to Korea. When Omum boards the plane, she is full of excitement. Unfortunately for Mike, he is the one sitting next to her. Throughout the flight, she keeps bothering him, insisting on looking out of the window, which annoys him so much that he finally decides to switch seats with her and sits by the aisle instead. After that, Omum starts to feel that Mike looks familiar, as if he is an actor or a celebrity, but she cannot remember his name. She calls him by the wrong name, and he corrects her, introducing himself. However, she still gets it wrong and even starts singing a song from another singer, thinking it is one of his songs. She keeps talking non-stop, irritating him completely. During the meal service, Omum drinks wine, and as she consumes more, she loses control of her actions. She starts making strange gestures toward Mike, then suddenly stands up and gives a random performance inside the plane. As she continues drinking, she feels dizzy and decides to return to Mike's seat, but he tries to stop her from coming near him. Suddenly, she feels nauseous and ends up throwing up on his back before passing out. To make things worse, she loudly declares in front of everyone on the plane that he is her boyfriend. Trying to get rid of her, Mike takes her to the airplane bathroom and leaves her there alone. After leaving Omum in the bathroom, Mike removes his stained shirt, places it on her seat, and moves to another spot. A short while later, the flight attendant helps Omum back to her seat. When the plane arrives in Korea, all the passengers leave except for Omum, who is still asleep. A flight attendant comes to wake her up, and as she regains consciousness, she accidentally takes Mike's shirt. At the airport, someone is waiting for her to take her to the hotel where she will be staying, which turns out to be the same hotel where Mike is staying. Meanwhile, Mike prepares for his press interviews, while Omum gets ready to explore Korea. During her tour, Omum is taking a selfie when a man in the distance appears in her photo. Noticing him, she intentionally asks him to take another picture with her. He agrees, so she takes a picture from afar and feels happy. She thanks him and continues on her way, but after some time, she runs into him again. She approaches him and sits beside him, but to her surprise, he starts speaking in English. She then talks to herself in Thai, wondering what he is saying, but he understands her and responds with a long and fast sentence in English. Omam assumes that he is flirting with her and says so out loud. However, he replies in Thai, telling her that he is not, which leaves her feeling embarrassed. He then introduces himself and tells her that his name is Guy. He invites her to have a meal with him, and they spend some time together. Omam later suggests riding a tandem bicycle, but he tells her that he is busy and has a lot of work to do. When she begs him, he calls his manager and cancels his appointments to spend the rest of the day with her. During their conversation, Omam tells Guy that her dream is to become a screenwriter. He encourages her to pursue it and gives her the nickname The Dreamer. By the end of the day, they take a commemorative photo together and exchange phone numbers. Guy promises to contact her as soon as he arrives in Thailand. After that, he bids her farewell and leaves. It turns out that Guy is Mike's childhood friend. While they are talking, Guy tells Mike that he met a girl who made him laugh for the first time in a long while and that she is the only one who made him feel truly comfortable. He also reveals that she is Thai and that he has decided to return to Thailand and settle there. Guy then asks Mike about Min, feeling sad, replies that he doesn't know what she is thinking. Guy tells him that Min is acting this way because she knows he has feelings for her, so she is playing with his emotions. Meanwhile, Omam continues exploring Korea. During one of her outings, she meets a group of Koreans who invite her to join them for some drinks. After drinking, she loses control of her actions and starts dancing. Everyone joins her, and they dance together. She spends the next day the same way, enjoying every moment. On the third day, Omam receives a call from a hotel staff member asking if she would like to extend her stay, as her current booking is only for 2 nights. Shocked, she rushes to the front desk to clarify the situation, believing that her sister had booked 5 nights for her. She tries to explain her problem to the receptionist, but due to the language barrier, she struggles to communicate. At that moment, Guy happens to be at the hotel and notices Omam looking confused. She explains what happened and asks for his help. When he checks with the receptionist, they discover that her reservation was indeed only for 2 nights. Omam tries calling her sister to find out the truth, but On doesn't answer. Meanwhile, Mike arrives at the hotel and sees Omam talking with Guy. Guy approaches Mike and they talk for a bit before leaving together, while Omam remains puzzled. She tries calling On again, but she still doesn't answer, which only adds to her worry and confusion. With no other option, Omam extends her stay for a 3rd night, even though she has no idea how she will pay for it, as she has run out of money. While walking down the street, Omam spots a huge advertisement featuring Mike, and an idea comes to her mind. She suddenly remembers that she still has his shirt, which she accidentally took from the plane, and decides to use it to her advantage. She sneaks into his hotel room unnoticed while he is busy on a phone call. However, just as she is about to leave the shirt, he suddenly steps out of his room and catches her standing there, staring at her in shock. Omam quickly tries to explain, telling him that she washed his shirt and came to return it. However, Mike gets furious, assuming that she is just another one of his obsessive fans. He mockingly tells her that she is not even his type. Annoyed, Omam fires back, insisting that she is not a fan of his at all, doesn't even know who he is, and has never listened to his music. Losing his patience, Mike throws her out of the room. But just before she leaves, she suddenly stops and boldly asks him to lend her some money, pointing out that they are both Thai. Mike bursts into laughter, ridiculing her request before scolding her harshly. Omam tries to explain that she was tricked and that he is the only Thai person she knows here, but he doesn't care about her excuses. He insists that she leave, and when she refuses, he loses his temper, picks her up, and physically throws her out of his room. She begs him as he shuts the door, making him hesitate for a moment. But instead of helping her, he reopens the door just to snatch his shirt from her hands, then slams it shut in her face without giving her another chance to speak. Feeling frustrated and humiliated, Omam returns to her room, seething at how rudely Mike treated her. As she sits there, deep in thought, her eyes land on her camera. That's when she remembers the photo she took with Guy, and a daring idea crosses her mind. Determined to turn the situation in her favor, she grabs her camera and heads back to Mike's room. When he opens the door, she immediately shows him the picture and tells him that Guy is the one who deceived her, fully aware that the two are friends. She then starts spinning a fabricated story, claiming that she was about to marry Guy and that he was the one who invited her to Korea. However, she was shocked to find out that he had secretly returned to Thailand, abandoning her alone. To make matters worse, she dramatically adds that he had another girlfriend all along. she continues her act flawlessly, emphasizing that she has no money left and only possesses a return ticket to Thailand. She exaggerates her crying, threatening to expose Guy's betrayal to the world. To make her story even more convincing, she dramatically recounts fictional details about their supposed love story, insisting that she will never let him live happily after breaking her heart. Pretending to leave, she turns away, but Mike suddenly stops her, having started to believe her tale. He proposes a deal. She must sign a contract stating that she will never approach Guy again, in exchange for 200,000 baht. Omam refuses, claiming she only needs 40,000 baht to cover her hotel expenses and the rest of her trip. Reluctantly, she agrees and signs the contract against her will. Mike then asks her to write down her phone number, warning her that if she gives a fake one, he will report her. Frustrated, she has no choice but to write it correctly. With the money in hand, she returns to her room, relieved yet irritated. She promises herself that once she's back in Thailand, she will repay her debt to him. Until then, she intends to enjoy the rest of her trip to the fullest, as if nothing had ever happened. When Omam returns to Thailand after her trip, she is shocked to find most of the furniture in her house missing. Confused and unsettled, she struggles to understand what happened. The next day, she goes to look for Bao at his workplace, but his former employer informs her that he resigned a long time ago. Omam is further stunned when she hears that Bao bought a house in a distant area, got married, and is expecting a child. Her shock turns into heartbreak when she learns that his wife is none other than On. Devastated that her sister betrayed and abandoned her, selling part of their home's furniture, Omam returns home feeling lost. The next morning, she wakes up to find 5 men surrounding her. Panicked, she realizes that one of them is the broker, who informs her that On sold the house along with the furniture. Omam tries to protest, but she soon discovers that On has already taken the money and that the house now belongs to someone else. Desperate, she pleads with the broker for help, explaining that her sister deceived her. However, he tells her that the only thing he can do is allow her to stay in the house for 1 more week until she finds another place to live. In the meantime, they will continue removing the remaining furniture, including her late father's belongings, but she is powerless to stop them. Meanwhile, Mike returns from Korea and visits Min, bringing a bouquet of flowers and inviting her to dinner. However, she rejects his offer. At the same time, Guy calls her and asks her out for dinner, to which she eagerly agrees. When Guy learns that Mike is with her, he asks her to pass the phone to him. Over the call, Guy invites Mike to join them for dinner, and despite Min's frustration, Mike agrees. Min grows irritated by Mike's presence, while Mike becomes jealous as he notices her clear admiration for Guy. At that moment, Mike suddenly remembers Omam. Without hesitation, he searches for her number and calls her, demanding that she come meet him immediately. When Amon goes to meet Mike, he asks her to have dinner with him and then tells her that he needs her help with something. Handing her some money, he instructs her to buy an elegant dress, emphasizing that she must bring back the receipts. Then, with a mocking tone, he insults her by saying, "Keep the change for yourself." Feeling humiliated by his rude attitude, Amon lashes out at him in anger, but he remains indifferent to her words. Instead, he coldly reminds her that she owes him and insists that she accompany him to dinner, leaving her with no choice but to comply. Later, she begins searching for a suitable dress. When evening comes, she arrives at the designated place wearing an elegant outfit that makes her look completely different. Upon seeing her, Mike is momentarily stunned by her transformation, briefly admiring her new appearance. She then hands him the receipts and the remaining money, treating him with the same dismissive attitude he had shown her earlier, which clearly displeases him. However, he chooses not to comment and simply takes her along to the restaurant, where they are set to meet Min and Jay. When Jay and Min arrive, Mike's expression lights up, as if he has been planning something all along. The moment Jay catches sight of Amon, he rushes toward her excitedly. Guy enthusiastically extends his hand toward Omam, calling her by the nickname he had given her before, the Dreamer. Omam hesitantly reaches out to shake his hand, her movements cautious as if afraid of Mike's reaction. This sudden shift in her demeanor surprises Mike, who narrows his eyes in suspicion. He glances at Omam, then turns to Guy and asks in disbelief, "How do you know her?" Guy, completely unaware of the tension between them, smiles and begins to explain. He tells Mike that Omam is the girl he met in Korea, describing how they first encountered each other and how he had never laughed so much in a long time until he met her. As Guy shares his story, Mike listens in silence, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, Min, who has been observing the situation, becomes increasingly curious. She watches Mike closely, trying to decipher his reaction. Feeling the weight of Mike's intense gaze on her, Omam feels embarrassed and nervous, trying to act normal, but she fails. making Mike even more suspicious. He starts recalling all her past lies and becomes certain that she is a fraud. Though furious, he hides his anger and begins sending her text messages during dinner, writing, "You're a fraud. You deceived me." She replies, "I didn't lie. I was deceived too." Mike remains silent throughout dinner, struggling to process the shock. When the evening ends, he says to everyone, "I'll take Olmam home myself." She quickly tries to avoid it, saying, "No need, I can go back alone." But he insists, firmly holding her hand and pulling her along with him. From a distance, a journalist secretly watches Mike, taking photos and following his movements. Suddenly, he says coldly, "I'm taking you to the police station." Olmam's eyes widen in shock. She turns to him quickly and tries to stop him. "Wait, let me explain first." But he doesn't stop. She has no choice but to speak fast, telling him about her sister, how she sold the house and deceived her completely. Mike doesn't believe her and mocks, "Even in dramas, this wouldn't happen. Do you think I'm that stupid?" Olmam, losing her patience, glared at him angrily and said, "Report me for what? I signed the contract agreeing not to approach your friend, but you were the one who asked me to come, weren't you?" Mike felt irritated and snapped back, "You're just taking advantage of me because I'm a famous singer." Olmam let out a mocking laugh, leaned in close, and whispered in his ear, "I tricked you because you're an idiot." Then, without warning, she bit him hard. He screamed in pain, and when he tried to grab her, she hit him with her bag. Quickly, she took off her shoe and threw it at him before running away as fast as she could, leaving him stunned in the middle of the road. A week later, the new buyers started moving furniture into the house, and workers were busy arranging everything. But every night, after everyone left, Olmam secretly returned to sleep there. On the third night, she sat in a corner, writing a new script and murmuring lines to herself, acting out the scenes as she wrote them. At that moment, a luxurious car stopped in front of the house. The new owner stepped out. It was none other than Mike. He stood outside, staring at the house. Suddenly, Mike hears a noise inside the house. He steps in to check and finds Olmam. He sharply asks how she got in, and she replies that this is her home and tells him to leave. But he informs her that he is the new owner of the house. She tells him her story again, and when he calls the broker he bought the house from, he confirms that she is telling the truth. However, he also explains that the purchase was legal and there is nothing he can do. Mike then asks Olmam for the keys, but she refuses to hand them over. So, he calls the agency and requests to have the locks changed. Olmam is forced to leave the house, but with nowhere to go, she sits on the street under the rain, crying, unsure of what to do. The next morning, when Mike returns home, he is shocked to find Olmam asleep in front of his door. He approaches to wake her up and asks her to leave. She struggles to stand but suddenly loses her balance and collapses. Checking her forehead, he realizes she has a high fever. Without hesitation, he carries her inside, prepares cold compresses for her, and stays by her side, feeling deeply concerned. As he sits beside her, he flips through her diary and discovers that she has no one in the world. Her life had revolved around her father, but after his death, everything turned into a tragedy. Feeling sad for her, he carefully places the diary back in its spot. The next morning, he prepares breakfast and places it beside her. Meanwhile, the house is in a complete mess, so he calls his manager and asks her to find someone to clean it, and checks on her one last time before leaving. Olmam, who had actually been awake, gets up, eats the food he brought, and then starts cleaning the house. In the evening, when Olmam hears Mike returning, she places a warm towel on her face and pretends to be asleep. However, as soon as he enters to check on her, he picks up the towel and notices it's warm, realizing that she is tricking him. He wakes her up and tells her to leave his house, but she begs him not to kick her out. After some thought, he agrees to let her stay under one condition. She must work as the house manager for a salary of 25,000 baht, but she will be responsible for paying the water, electricity, and food bills. With no other choice, Olmam agrees but insists on having a written contract to protect her rights. They both agree and sign the contract. The next day, Mike gives her a list of rules she must follow and tells her about the type of food he likes. Olmam slowly starts adjusting to her new life as the house manager. After some time, Mike decides to buy a diamond ring for Min, planning to propose to her. He calls her and invites her to dinner at a specific restaurant, and she agrees. Meanwhile, Jay visits Min at her workplace and also invites her to dinner. Forgetting about her date with Mike, she accepts Jay's invitation. Mike, wanting to make the proposal special, books the entire restaurant for a private and romantic evening. He arrives early to set everything up. One of the restaurant's staff members, sensing that Mike is about to propose, secretly calls a journalist to share the news. Mike waits for Min for 2 full hours but receives no call from her. Eventually, she remembers their dinner and sends him a message apologizing, saying she won't be able to come. Furious, Mike leaves the restaurant, and at that moment, the journalist captures a photo of him walking out, sparking curiosity about what had happened. At the same time, Ulmum returns home and finds Mike there, but he is in a furious state. Without any clear reason, he takes out all his anger on her. Meanwhile, Min is spending time with Jay. During their conversation, Jay keeps talking about Mike, jokingly saying that if he were a girl, he would have fallen for him because Mike is someone truly worthy of love. Min feels embarrassed, then tells him that she only sees Mike as a friend, subtly hinting that she has feelings for Jay instead. Jay is surprised by her words but gently tells her that he only sees her as a sister. This shocks Min, leaving her speechless. Feeling deeply embarrassed, she excuses herself and goes to the restroom, where she cries in private. When she returns, she finds that Jay has already left, leaving her a note apologizing for making her uncomfortable and explaining that he had to leave and wouldn't be able to take her home. Min walks out of the restaurant in tears and calls Mike. At first, he doesn't want to answer because he is still upset, but in the end, he picks up. He hears her crying as she apologizes for not showing up to meet him. Mike immediately forgives her, and she thanks him, saying that he is the only person who is always there for her when she needs someone. She then suggests they have dinner together the next day to make it up to him, and he agrees without hesitation. As Mike thinks about their conversation, he begins reconsidering his proposal and decides to practice how he will ask her this time, hoping for a different outcome. Ulmum notices Mike practicing his marriage proposal and bursts into laughter, making him feel embarrassed. She tells him that his approach is all wrong and that he has no idea how to properly propose to a girl. Annoyed, he steps down and asks her to teach him the right way. But before agreeing, she insists on hearing his story first. Mike confesses that he has loved Min for a long time, but she has no idea about his feelings. Ulmum then tells him that the girl he loves definitely knows how he feels. She advises him to confess directly and even suggests that he should kiss Min as a clear way to express his love. Mike stares at Ulmum intently, considering her words. But suddenly she laughs at him, calling him an idiot for believing everything he hears. She warns him that if he ever tries to kiss her, she will slap him immediately. Then she continues teasing him, which only irritates him more. The next day, a newspaper publishes a photo of Mike along with a headline suggesting that he had planned a romantic date, but his girlfriend didn't care enough to show up. Mike calls Min to ask if they can postpone their dinner, but she immediately brings up the news. He denies the rumors, telling her that he never booked the entire restaurant and that the reports are false. Min then suggests that instead of going out, he should come to her workplace and have dinner there. Mike agrees and heads over to meet her. Ulmum tries to sell a new script she wrote, but once again, she faces rejection. They ask her to rewrite it, which leaves her feeling frustrated and discouraged. Meanwhile, Mike heads to meet Min, determined to confess his love and give her the ring. However, just as he is about to do so, she receives a balloon doll along with a card. When she reads it, her expression darkens with sadness. Mike asks who sent it, and she tells him it's from someone who never cared about her. Curious, he takes a look at the card and realizes it's from Jay. Min then admits that she was foolish for falling in love with someone who never had feelings for her, and she feels completely shattered. Hearing this, Mike becomes furious and yells at her, saying it's foolish to love someone who doesn't love you back. In reality, he is talking about himself, but Min doesn't realize it. Overcome with emotions, he storms out, drowning in his own sadness. When he returns home, Ulmum is already there, but she also seems down. She approaches him and apologizes for not preparing his meal. He forgives her and asks why she was late. She explains that she was trying to sell a script she wrote but failed once again. They order food and sit down to eat together. During dinner, Mike asks her to bring him the script so he can read it and help her find and fix any mistakes. After reading it, he points out some flaws and gives her advice. They talk for a while, but he still feels sad and tense. So, Ulmum decides to teach him a song her father used to sing to her when she was sad as a child. They start singing together, and the night passes happily between them. The next day, Mike wakes up and goes back to treating Ulmum as his house manager. He supervises her cleaning, then asks her to clean everything again. While working, she imagines the roles reversed, where Mike is the one serving her. In her daydream, she tortures and hits him, feeling extremely happy. Back to reality, as she continues cleaning, she notices the diamond ring he bought for Min. She picks it up and starts teasing him with provoking words. Annoyed, he snatches it from her and throws it out the window, then adds more work to her tasks as punishment. While cleaning, she finds an invitation to the opening party of Guy's new company. She asks Mike for permission to attend, but he refuses. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door. It's his manager. Mike doesn't want anyone to know she's living with him, so he asks her to hide. She refuses unless he promises to let her go to the party. Left with no choice, Mike agrees. Mike's manager comes to update him on the latest news about him and Min. She tells him that journalists are spreading reports about him leaving Min's place angrily, sparking rumors about their relationship. She warns him to avoid going out much in the next couple of days since the media is closely watching him. However, he insists that he must attend Guy's party. She advises him to be careful with the press before leaving. Caught up in the conversation, Mike forgets about Olmam hiding. By nighttime, he finally remembers and opens the door to where she was hiding, only to find her asleep. He wakes her up and tells her they will go to the party, but separately. The next day, when they arrive at the event, he drops her off before the entrance and then walks inside alone. The press immediately surrounds him, asking about his relationship with Min and why he visited her at work. He responds that she's just a friend and that he went to see her because she's a fashion designer and was helping him with a suit. Before the journalists could dig deeper with their questions, Mike's manager steps in to stop them and leads him away. Meanwhile, Olmam's only concern at the party is enjoying the food. However, she ends up meeting Guy in a quiet corner away from the crowd and starts telling him about her new script, which has a romantic theme. She even performs a scene for him, making him feel happy and fully engaged with her. From a distance, Min sees Olmam and Guy together and feels upset. She walks over to Guy and confronts him, prompting Olmam to excuse herself and leave them alone. Min expresses her frustration, reminding Guy that she confessed her feelings to him, but he didn't care. He replies that he can't love the same girl Mike loves. Min then asks if he would change his mind if Mike didn't love her, but he doesn't understand what she means. Without explaining, she turns and walks toward Mike. Feeling uneasy, Guy calls Mike's manager and asks her to pull him away from the journalists. However, she tells him it's too late. Mike is already speaking to them. At that moment, Min reaches Mike in the middle of the journalists and party guests. In a loud and frustrated voice, she asks him if he truly loves her or not. Mike feels tense and embarrassed, unsure of how to respond. Then, to put an end to the matter once and for all, he announces in front of everyone that he will finally introduce them to the girl he loves. He walks toward Min for a moment, but suddenly changes direction and heads toward Olmam. Without warning, he kisses her in front of everyone. The journalists quickly capture the moment, and the crowd erupts in excitement. After the party, Mike and Olmam return home together, but both are angry and remain silent. When they arrive, Olmam stops him and furiously demands to know why he acted that way at the party. He responds that he will think about the reason, then asks what she plans to do now. In frustration, she slaps him and tells him not to drag her into his problems and messy life. Then she storms off. News about them spreads rapidly, and for the first time, Olmam's sister appears, watching the reports and seeing a video of Mike kissing Olmam. The next day, Mike goes to Olmam and offers her a deal, marriage for 2 years in exchange for giving her the house. At first, she refuses, questioning how he could so easily give away a home he just bought. He tells her that his money is his own, and he can do whatever he wants with it. Then, he gives her 1 day to think it over. After much thought, Olmam agrees, and they sit together to draft the terms of their marriage contract. Mike's conditions: Olmam must continue cleaning as she did before. She must appear as his girlfriend in front of everyone. No one should know about their agreement. After 2 years, the house will officially become hers. Olmam's condition: no physical contact or kisses between them. When Mike hears this, he tells her that he had no other choice when he kissed her in front of everyone. He also adds that she isn't his type of woman anyway. She replies that she doesn't like him as a man either. At that moment, Mike makes a bet with Olmam. He will make her fall in love with him within 2 years. He tells her that whoever falls in love first loses the bet, but he clarifies that this has nothing to do with the house agreement. It's just for his own pride because he is confident that he will make her love him. Later, Mike's manager starts working on Olmam's appearance, choosing elegant outfits for her so she can accompany him to a press conference about their relationship. Olmam feels nervous and overwhelmed by the bright lights around her, but Mike reassures her and holds her hand to calm her down. When the conference begins, reporters ask how their relationship started. Mike explains that he met her on his last trip to Korea and fell in love with her because she was natural and never tried to pretend to be someone she wasn't. He adds that she wasn't focused on her looks but acted freely and spontaneously. Speaking romantically about his feelings for her, he then takes her hand, kisses it in front of everyone, and places a kiss on her cheek. The reporters then urge Olmam to kiss him back. She feels embarrassed but reluctantly gives him a shy kiss, then playfully touches his face. The journalists find her charming and start to adore her, making the couple even more popular with the public. Meanwhile, Mike's grandmother watches the news on TV. When she sees that her grandson is planning to get married, she is so shocked that she faints. The next day, Mike's mother visits Ulmum and asks her to come with her to see his grandmother. Ulmum agrees and goes with her. When they arrive, the grandmother is delighted to see Ulmum. Meanwhile, Mike calls Ulmum to check on her and is shocked when she casually tells him that she's at his family's house. Without hesitation, Mike rushes over and playfully jokes with his grandmother before apologizing to her and his family for not telling them about his relationship earlier. However, he seems in a hurry and quickly takes Ulmum with him to leave. Just before they exit, he unexpectedly comes face to face with his father. He turns his face away and walks out immediately. On their way back, Ulmum suggests holding the wedding at his family's home, but Mike strongly refuses. Angered by her words, he snaps at her, yelling that she doesn't know his father at all. They get into an intense argument, and Mike, overwhelmed with frustration, suddenly stops the car, forces her to get out in the middle of the road, and then drives off, leaving her alone in a distant street. Ulmum walks down the road in tears while Mike keeps driving. However, guilt starts to eat away at him as he imagines her all alone in such a place. Unable to shake the feeling, he turns the car around and drives back to pick her up. But when he reaches the spot where he left her, she is nowhere to be found. When Ulmum returns home, she is filled with sadness and anger over what Mike did. She starts packing her clothes, preparing to leave. Just as she is about to step out, she finds Un standing in front of her, tears welling in her eyes. Un suddenly runs toward her, embracing her tightly while crying and asking why she decided to leave like this. She repeatedly apologizes, then takes Ulmum with her to her home, where Bao is also present. At their house, both Un and Bao apologize for everything they did to her in the past. Un assures Ulmum that she never intended to hurt her. Ulmum feels relieved, especially when Un shares unexpected news. She is going to be an aunt soon, meaning Un is pregnant. This news brings joy to Ulmum's heart, and in the end, she forgives them. Meanwhile, Mike returns home only to find that Ulmum is gone. A mix of anger and worry washes over him. Un then asks Ulmum if she plans to go back to Mike, but Ulmum firmly says she can't live with him anymore. In response, Un suggests that Ulmum stay with her and Bao as a way to make up for everything they put her through. The next day, Ulmum receives a call from Mike's mother, asking to meet her. When Ulmum arrives, Mike's mother begins to share a painful story from the past. She reveals that Mike once had a sister but lost her years ago, and he has never been able to move past the grief of losing her. After her death, he blamed his father, leading to a deep conflict between them that resulted in years of estrangement. She then tells Ulmum that Mike's father will not be attending the wedding because Mike would be happier without him there. However, she also confesses that she wishes to see her son reconcile with his father. She asks Ulmum to personally invite Mike's father to the wedding, believing that Ulmum's presence in Mike's life might be the key to helping him overcome this emotional barrier. Ulmum thinks about it for a long time, and in the end, she decides to visit Mike's father herself. When she meets him, she makes a heartfelt request. She asks him to be her guardian at the wedding since she has no parents to stand by her on such an important day. Mike's father is deeply moved by her words and happily agrees. When Ulmum returns home, Mike is overjoyed to see her, but his happiness quickly turns to shock as she begins yelling at him for the way he has treated her. He tries to apologize, but she firmly tells him that their wedding will take place at his family's home. If not, there will be no wedding at all. Leaving him deep in thought, she then heads to her room. Days pass, and the wedding day finally arrives. As Ulmum wished, the ceremony is held at Mike's family home. During the celebration, Mike's mother presents Ulmum with a precious gift, her own wedding necklace, symbolizing her acceptance of Ulmum as part of the family. At the same time, Min approaches Mike and sincerely apologizes for her past actions, showing genuine remorse. The wedding ceremony begins, and Mike and Ulmum go through all the rituals together, making their marriage official. Afterward, they announce their honeymoon destination to the press, choosing Korea, the place where they first met. When they arrive in Korea, Mike starts treating Ulmum coldly, making her carry all the luggage by herself. He tells her he doesn't care what she does, but he wants her to stay away from him. Ulmum feels hurt but tries to ignore it. The next day, feeling bored, they decide to go out together. Unexpectedly, the distance between them begins to shrink as time passes. Throughout the day, they enjoy each other's company and share moments of laughter. As evening approaches, Ulmum feels hungry and takes Mike to the place where she had previously met the Koreans who danced with her. When they see her, they warmly welcome her and start singing and dancing with her again. Mike finds himself drawn to the lively atmosphere and, for the first time, decides to join them. It's a completely new experience for him, one he has never had before. For the first time, he feels truly free and happy, enjoying every moment with Omum, unaware that his feelings for her are beginning to change. At night, the two argue over who will sleep on the bed, hitting each other for hours until they get exhausted and fall asleep side by side. When Mike is about to move closer to kiss her, she hits him with a pillow and warns him not to come near her again. The next day, Omum watches a little girl playing with her father on a bicycle. Mike notices her sadness and asks if she wants to ride a bike. She tells him that she does but never learned how because her father passed away before he could teach her. As she remembers him, she starts crying, so Mike brings a bike and tries to teach her. While doing so, he gets a call from his manager. Distracted, he doesn't notice Omum falling, and she injures her foot. Feeling guilty, Mike wraps her wound with his scarf and takes her out for a walk. He enjoys being with her, lost in her features. When they return to Thailand, they grow even closer. During their flight back, their bond deepens. Once they arrive home, Mike orders her to take out all his clothes, wash them, and prepare his meal before he sleeps. Despite being tired, she does everything, but when he wakes up and tastes the food, he doesn't like it and throws it out the window. Angry, Omum yells at him, warning that if he makes a mess again, he will be the one to clean it. She then decides to punish him by buying food from outside. The meal she brings is chicken feet soup, and Mike is shocked when he sees it. Omum is pleased to have annoyed him, but he surprises her by saying it's his favorite dish. His reaction wasn't from disgust but from excitement. He looks happy and treats her kindly. Omum is surprised that a famous star like him would love such food. Mike explains that when he was young, he ate it by mistake, not knowing it was considered food for the house servants. He tells her that only his mother knew it was his favorite and used to secretly cook it for him, away from his grandmother. After hearing this, Omum starts preparing it for him regularly. Later, Omum writes a new script, but it gets rejected again. She calls Guy and asks him to review it. He tells her to come to his office and leave it with him. After that, she returns home to find that Mike has bought her a bike and wants to teach her how to ride it. She feels overjoyed. During the training, Mike falls and twists his foot badly, but he hides his pain so she won't worry. He keeps teaching her until she can ride on her own. Back home, they sit together, happily chatting. However, Min interrupts them, telling Mike that she has been trying to reach him for a while, but he hasn't answered her calls. She asks why he ignored her, then tells him she has a new fashion collection and needs him as the main model. Mike replies that he won't be available. Min argues that just because he got married doesn't mean he's dead and that he shouldn't ignore her like this. He tells her that she won't always find him by her side and that she should look for another model. Then he walks away. The next day, while practicing a new dance routine, Mike falls again and injures his foot badly, unable to stand on it. He calls his manager, who brings a doctor. The doctor tells him that he has overstrained his injured foot and needs complete rest for 2 months. Omum is shocked since she didn't even know he was injured. His manager explains that it happened during practice. Omum then recalls how his foot twisted while he was teaching her to ride the bike and feels guilty. She knows he has an important performance soon that he can't cancel, as a new singer is competing with him, and the agency needs him to appear as the main act in 3 weeks. The doctor asks Omum to take care of Mike and apply cold compresses. She feels sad, believing his injury is her fault. She promises to take good care of him and provide everything he needs. However, Mike takes advantage of her promise and keeps calling her every moment, asking for different things. The next day, his manager sends a professional nurse to care for him, but Mike refuses, insisting that Omum should be the one to look after him. Without her knowing, he sends the nurse away. While Omum's phone rings, Mike sees that the caller is Guy and decides to answer. He asks Guy why he's calling, but Guy refuses to explain, saying it's a matter between him and Omum. He only asks Mike to let her know he called so she can return his call later. However, Mike doesn't tell her. When Guy calls again, Omum picks up this time. Guy tells her that he knows Mike didn't inform her about his call. He then says he has read her story and sees potential for it to be turned into a movie script, though it needs some adjustments and time. He suggests meeting to discuss the details. After the call, Omum quickly gets ready to meet him, but before leaving, she prepares Mike's food and medicine. Mike feels upset that she's leaving him alone. When Omum meets Guy, he points out the weaknesses in her story and offers to help her improve it. She starts working on the revisions but keeps glancing at her watch anxiously. Noticing her tension, Guy asks what's wrong, and she tells him she's worried about leaving Mike by himself. He suggests they meet every Tuesday morning to work together, which makes her happy. She quickly gathers her things and rushes back to Mike. Upon arriving home, she finds the house in complete chaos. Mike had deliberately made a mess to express his frustration at being left alone. Shortly after, Mike receives a call from Min. She tells him she will be traveling to New York soon because she feels lonely and has no one left. She also complains that he no longer gives her the attention he once promised. Concerned, Mike asks where she is and decides to go to her. Omum tries to stop him, but he doesn't listen. When he arrives, he asks Min not to leave and promises to take care of her again. Min is happy with his promise and rests her head on his shoulder. Meanwhile, Omum waits for him at home, worried, after preparing his food and medicine.